Hey, what's up, guys? What you're looking at was an absolute nightmare. Yeah, I still get stumped every once in a while, but man, this one was a royal pain. It's a 4K build, and like no matter what I did, it did not want to get working. Uh, the problem with building these things is there's a malfunction that it'll do, and there's so many things that can cause a single malfunction. So if you don't really know what you're doing, you're going to have a lot of problems running it down. And this one, man, I think it ran over 5 days on the build. I did finally get it working, and I ended up swapping out the frame, the barrel nut, and the valve body. Um, it's yeah. I swapped out the surgage board. Just did all kinds of things. I even tried a couple of different motors in it. Just tried everything. Finally, it's like messing around with three-digit combination lock and just guessing at it at some point. Normally they're not like this, but occasionally I'll get them in like this, and it makes you really think that the matrix truly does exist, and there's somebody up there just screwing with me. Anyway, lately, well, this morning somebody uh, I did a build for not long ago was wanting to know about the adapters, and he's a little confused on that. Now, I made a video about the internal air adapters a while ago, but this video is going to be geared specifically towards this issue, if you will, because I've had a few people that I've had to explain it to. So I just figured I'd make a video to clear everything up. The issue is that while he was waiting on his build, he ordered this type of fitting, this type of air adapter. And when everything came, he tried to screw it into the internal adapter that I'd put on it, and it didn't fit. So here is what we do. If you're in the same position, or you've already got an air adapter, let me know before you send me the build. And if you want to continue to use that one, I'll knock some off of the build. And there's a few advantages of the internal air adapters. They're a lot lighter than the factory gas intake. They're made out of anodized aluminum instead of a big block of steel. And you can screw a refillable CO2 bottle directly into it, or an HPA bottle. Uh, they do give you more powerful than an unmodified factory intake, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But when you're using it direct connect, like you want to screw a bottle into it, if you have a regulator that outputs more than about 1,000 psi, and you've got a full bottle and you want to screw it on, what will happen is there's a pin down in there. You probably can't see it, but that pin in the middle pushes down on your ball valve on your regulator on your air bottle, and it opens it up that way. Well, if you've got more than 1,000 psi output on the regulator, what will happen is as soon as that pin cracks the valve open, it will pressurize the whole magazine, and it'll be on there so tight that you can't really screw it. And these are made out of aluminum, so it's not a good idea to force it. But you can do it with CO2 bottles. I just recommend, if you're using HPA, that you fill the bottle on the magazine and empty the magazine the same day that you fill it, because leaving them compressed is hard on the seals. It'll smush them and deform them over time. All right, so to get into this, to put our factory intake back on here, what we need to do is take the magazine apart, and we got to take this this part out. And there's a button on the side that we can push, and we push that and it falls out. See if I can do it one-handed. And now we can remove these 4 screws. Now we're inside, and just keep in mind that this is not factory what's going on in here. So if you have a factory magazine, it's not going to look like this on the inside. And I should also mention that there is this adapter also, and I wonder how many more times I can say also. But this adapter works like this adapter, but it gives you the functionality of the internal air adapter. This is a factory air intake. So either one of these, and there are different types of these. I think somebody makes one of these out of aluminum, so it might be shiny. I had a stainless steel one at one point, but they work with the internal air adapter. I think the ones available now like this don't have this hex on the sides of it. They're just round. And when you're installing these, one of the reasons that I like these so much is because the seal way down inside here tends to leak. This portion of that, you see that lip, the O-ring fits around that in the lip, and in this case it just pushes on that O-ring way down in there. And yeah, that O-ring tends to dry out and leak. And what people will do is they'll lock tight these things on, and after they just continue to screw them on tighter and tighter and tighter, and they'll be like really hard to get off. And yeah, so that's always fun to deal with. Besides that, down there there's a little cap with a flathead on the top of it, and that unscrews, and behind that there's a screen, and it's like a little filter. And can you see that hole, that teeny hole? That's where the air goes into the tube. And you can remove this screen and cap and just put them to the side and port that hole if you want to get around the same flow as one of these internal adapters. If you do that, you need to make sure that after you drill through there and port that hole, that you remove any burrs on the inside here, because you don't want them ripping the seal on the air tube as you put it on. And I'll show you what that is in just a second. To get the air tube out, you've got this stainless steel liner in here on my builds, and that just keeps the magazine from separating. There's 2 halves separating, and under high air pressure and the force of the motor pushing BBs up. And if you don't have one of these tubes, this is what Drosmax used to use, and that just goes on either side of it like that and physically holds the 2 halves together. And you can also run zip ties, some small zip ties through there around the front, and cinch it tight and push the nut down in there. So that also works for preventing that. Now to get the tube out, since that's stuck in there, the polymer is actually holding that in. You want to pull it out from the top. You don't want to bend the tube. It's pretty stiff, but it's not really something that you want to ruin. So once that's out like that, you can just pull out the assembly, set that to the side, and now we have our internal air adapter. Now one thing about these internal air adapters is at one point I ran out of air adapters, and this was early on when I met Rustlin Sepper Custom, and they were saying that they have the ability to make some things. So one of the first things we teamed up to do was these internal air adapters. Excuse me. You might have an early one that looks like this. Now, the first batch that they made, they didn't get the seal union on the inside quite right. So I sent them a Ninja ASA. This is a Chinese ASA. And they made these specifically from the Ninja ASA. And these Chinese ASAs will leak in here. If you happen to have one of these, how I get around it, because I haven't been able to get anything from Ninja for like a year. Yeah, it's really messed up still. But I just drop a seal down in there. Let me see if you can see that. You can, yeah, there you go. And also, while we're looking in there, you can see the two air inlets on either side of that pin that opens the regulator valve. But I just drop a seal down in there and screw that in. It works okay. It does leak sometimes, but because I don't have any Ninja ASAs, that's what I have to do to get them out. You can find Ninja ASAs on eBay or wherever, your favorite paintball shop, whatever. All right, now to put your factory intake on, these just pull off. And you can see how it works. You've got a seal here and a seal here. If you just got it back from me, this is going to be nice and lubricated and everything. If you're doing this on something that I didn't build, you're going to want to lubricate these with, I say silicone-based lubricant. But a couple of weeks ago, I'm really new to conventional air gunning, and I've used my treadmill oil, which is 100% silicone, in the chamber of one of my air guns, one of my brake barrels, and damned if it didn't diesel. So yeah, silicone oil is combustible. I can't recommend you do any of this stuff that I'm about to talk about. I'll just tell you what I do. I've gone to using this stuff or a silicone-based grease for several different areas. This grease is really good to put on seals. Just make sure you get it all around them. Now, your factory intake. You'll see this set screw here. I never used these set screws very early on in the beginning when I was messing around with my first one. I was putting the adapter back in it or taking it out. I think I was taking it out. And that set screw was tightened down, and I buggered up the threads on the adapter really bad. The replicas have that screw hole there. Let's see. And so do the internal air adapters. but I just don't use that at all. And I don't advise you to either. But that indicates the top. The hole on top is slightly more beveled than it is on the bottom. And that prevents you from cutting your seals as you put this on. You can put it on backwards to hide that hole. You just have to be real careful and squeeze your seals when you put it in. But have it on something solid and just push it down. The reason you want it on something solid is so you don't overshoot and get your seals on that sharp side of the hole. All right, now we'll put it back together. I'm not going to put it back together with this one on, but we will go ahead and get set up to do that, and I'll show you a couple of things that are pretty important to know when you're putting one of them back together. I forgot to tell you what was wrong with that build. Well, the thing that got it going was actually swapping out the barrel. That barrel on it is a Max SMG rifle barrel, and for some reason it didn't want to go 4K reliably with that barrel on it, but I put on one of the 400 millimeter Russian smoothbores and we were off to the races. All right, now putting this back together. You want to get all the BBs off of the auger, and when you put this down in here, well, let me get the BBs off first. All right, now we want to make sure that our space up top is where it needs to be, because that tube can slide up and down in there. So we're good to go right there. We want to start by pressing down, top down. And when I build these, I'll use a heat gun to heat this portion of the magazine up, or a hair dryer you can also use. And the reason I do that is if you don't have it nice and warm when you put this tube in, it will pinch down here, pinch it out around, and BBs will get stuck there. This is also, it'll catch bad BBs here before they get into your barrel, which is also a nice feature of that tube. And you know, you drop the bottom. Most of the time, if you have one stuck here, it'll fall out. You could, you know, blow on that end, or you know, put your air hose on that end to get them out. I had one get stuck. It was on this one actually, where I had a nasty BB get stuck in there. Yeah, as you can see, I went through several different types of BBs. Messing around with this thing, and the bad BB was one of these new copperheads in the red, white, and blue packaging. Now, the last can of daisies I got, I mentioned in the video, they look great, so I think they're done with their shenanigans, at least for now. But I don't ever recommend buying a bunch of BBs in bulk, because I got burned doing that really badly one time. So don't buy a whole bunch of BBs unless you know what you're getting. All right, now once you've got that tube in there, you just want to take it and look. You make sure it's not out around at the bottom. And if it is, and you don't have a hair dryer or something, sometimes what you can do is take it out again, rotate the tube 90 degrees, put it back in, and then press it back in there, and then recheck. Now this little spring, if this is your first time doing it, it could pop out and you wonder where it goes. Well, this is where it goes, and this also. Man, that scared the crap out of me. Anyway. Let's see, yeah, that's where that spring goes. Now, you don't want to pinch any wires. This is not a factory pigtail, because at one point with this build, I thought that maybe that was the issue that was causing the malfunction. So when you put this back, when you put the other clamshell on there, it has to go and press up against here with the mating side. So you want this wire out of the way, and you don't want this wire all the way on this side of the motor, because that motor takes up all that space. So you want it right there in that location, and you don't want your magazine pinching the two halves. If you put it back together and it's not, you can't squeeze it together and have everything made up properly, you need to take the cover back off and find where it's pinching this wire before you torque your screws down. So we're going to go ahead and put it back together. When you first put it back together, underneath here, press that button with your finger and make sure it goes free. Sometimes you have to push it hard and it'll pop into where it needs to be. But don't put it together without being able to press it in, because you'll have to loosen it up, and yeah. Also make sure that the pins that the door pivots on are in their holes. So now we've got it back together. While we're doing this, I wanted to mention something about these screws. There are compression nuts in there. They're not round, they've got ridges on the sides, and they're tapered. So as the screw tightens, it pulls them in there. Why they did that, I'm not really sure, because there's the mold accounts for a hex nut in there, and sometimes these, especially if it's a new magazine, before you ever take it apart, you should tighten them down to seat them, because I don't think I've ever seen them seated properly from the factory. And if you don't seat them and you take it apart, they'll fall out. But if you lose one, I can't remember, I think they're M4, but yeah, if you lose one, you can get an M4 nut and drop it right down in there, because as I said, the mold accounts for a hex nut that is supposed to go in there, and it will hold it. So that's about all there is to that. And if you have any other questions, email me or drop them down in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer them if I know the answer. Now, the rest of this video is going to be for posterity's sake, because we are under contract to sell this building, and I wanted to just walk you guys around it and show you where you've been this whole time. So, this is my shop. Oh, there's me. Hey. And before I got hot and heavy into baby machine guns, I was a cosmetologist. This is my dispensary / lathe table. And over there's just a bathroom. This was my salon. And I did all this work in here. It was pretty rough. The walls were yellow and purple, and and then I found out that I really, really hated doing hair. I've got like 2 customers left that I just do their hair because I like them, 2 guys. And being in a small town, everybody just assumed I was a barber, which was fine with me, because I really didn't like doing women's hair. I'm not a big talker. Doing videos and things like this is different. It's not real human interaction, which a lot of times I'm not a big fan of. Anyway, this is the testing room. This is where I would do all the testing. The building is pretty big. It's like 5,400 square feet, I think. And all this old furniture, my grandfather made most of it. And I saved all of the family furniture after my father passed, and I've just been storing it here. Hey, look, there's a little friend. Yeah, so now I gotta find a place for it. All this stuff is my brother's. I'll let him drop it here. And he needs to come get it. Yeah, this is the old range, and you see I've been kind of cleaning up in here. We should be out of here if everything goes to plan. We're going to close the 29th of October. Here's behind the test area. You can see how many of them didn't get caught. Yeah. How in the world are those BB holes up there? It looks like it. But back here is a small room. I was working on somebody's the other day, and it just got to where I was about to test it. And yeah, I'm looking for holes. That looks like one that didn't quite make it through. But below this desk, I'm sure there's holes. Yeah, there were some. The Historical Society used to rent out this small room for their crap, and they had showed up because they're moving their stuff out. And I was just about to test this, and I had to let the customer know. I said, I got everything ready to test, but I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to do it because there's a whole bunch of old ladies on my range right now, and I don't know how long they're going to be here, and they say they're coming back tomorrow. So they're out, and yeah, let's mosey on. In here is a nasty bathroom that I never use. They got their work cut out for them in here. This is spooky. 2 holes. We got this long hallway. And yeah, these rooms over here on this side, they're rough. Is it haunted? I don't know. I don't know. I've never really seen or heard much of anything to indicate that it is. It used to be. I'm not sure if it originally was a funeral home, but it had something to do with dead people. And back here, there's a concrete slab outside. The building in front of us is City Hall. That concrete slab was where they stored coffins. And I know this building was a Winn-Dixie at some point, but it had something to do with dead people, and it still does because my wife is a florist. She's been in here like 23 years. And I pretty much used that back area that we're leaving. And this is her area. Everything is a mess right now because we're in the process of sorting through 23 years of crap and getting it in lots for Florist to come in here and buy. Looky there. I got 2 helium tanks. Yeah. I've got some videos shooting helium. Just look at Mason Dawson helium. Now, I haven't done that in a long time, and all of those barrels that I was shooting helium out of were rifled. I have no idea what kind of velocities I could get with these new smooth bores, but fast, and one day we're going to find out. Yeah, speaking of velocities, it seems like they have a speed limit of right around 1,150 feet per second. I've got a friend who uses the 700 millimeter barrels with 3,000 psi, and that's what he gets regularly, but he can't get his fire rate up there past about 1,200. Now, I did some testing with 3,500 psi on Freebird with a 400 millimeter barrel, and that video's on YouTube, and I got 1150 with that length barrel and roughly the same pressure. So that might be the limit you can get with air. So yeah, this is the front, and this cooler is going home with us. I always wanted to hang deer in this thing, and I'm finally going to get the chance to do that. So, here you have downtown York, South Carolina. We could go on the roof, but I'm not going to do it. But as you can see, this building is quite large. I can't remember how long it is, but it's just more room than we need for what we do. Oh, and I gotta find places for all the family furniture. This was an old walk-in cool. Well, it still is. It doesn't work anymore. That is obviously staying. But yeah, this is where we all used to eat lunch. See, the thing is, her parents used to work for her, and she would pay her dad to deliver, but her mom would just sit up here and answer the phone and just kind of help her daughter out. And that was the situation when I came into the picture. And they'd gotten to where you're just getting too old. So they can't help her anymore. And she can't afford to hire anybody. And taxes on this building are $6,000 a year. So that's rent money. Well, as soon as we get out of here, oh man, we're going to be a lot better off, I tell you that. Yeah, it's a lot of space. But I mean, $6,000 a year. This is York, South Carolina. This isn't New York, New York. I mean, come on. Yeah, what happened with the taxes is several years ago, they decided to put a multi-million-dollar high school in our little city, and taxes doubled that year. Property taxes doubled. I can't remember what it was at, but I think it was like 1,000, and it went to 2,000 a year. The next year, it doubled. It doubled 3 years in a row. So I can't remember what it started out at, but now it's at $6,000 a year. And yeah, it's just killing business, small businesses anyway. Probably be big chains, big money come in here and do all kinds of stuff with these buildings that us plebs can't afford to uh, pay the taxes on anymore. So, and if you're wondering about the email address, it's also my physical address here, as well as the name of my shop. Yeah. Well, I cannot wait to get out of here, guys. It's been one of those things that I've thought about many, many times, packing up, getting out of here. And it's almost surreal actually doing it now. All right, later.